You are finally becoming who you are. The life you built cannot survive it. Carl Jung gave it a name: individuation. It is why most people will never understand what is happening to you. The word hides a trap. You sit in a full room and feel the floor collapse beneath who you used to be. You reach for the old words and your throat closes. By the end, you will understand what is dismantling you. You will understand the 7 marks it leaves on a human life, why you cannot reverse a single one, and what each one takes before it gives anything back. She is 32, sitting at a dinner she used to love, scanning herself for the broken part, certain something in her has failed. Nothing has failed. Something is arriving, and she does not yet know its name. But the part of you most desperate to believe you are chosen, above the people who cannot reach you, is the part you should trust the least. Individuation is not an awakening you are lucky to be having. It is a dismantling you never agreed to, and the only way out is through. For most of your life, the people around you gave you back a face you recognized. Now the face they hand back has gone strange. You say the things that have become most important to you and watch the meaning die in the air before it ever reaches them. You have probably decided this means something in you broke. It did not. What you are living is older and more exact than anything self-help has language for, and Jung mapped every stage of it. He would not have told you that you were special. He would have told you the truth, which is harder, and which is the only thing that will actually hold you while everything keeps shifting under you. But the loneliness is only the first and gentlest mark, and the next one does not ask your permission to arrive. Before we name the second sign, you have to understand what is actually being taken apart. Otherwise, none of this will land. Jung's map of the psyche is simpler than people make it. Picture 4 things. First, the ego. The ego is the part of you that says, I. It is the center of your conscious life, the narrator of your days. But Jung was precise about its size. The ego, he said, is only the center of the field of consciousness. It is one complex among many, not the whole. It is not the totality of who you are. It only believes it is. Here is the everyday version, because the map means nothing until it touches your life. For decades, you believed you ran the building. You held the keys. You decided who got in. Individuation is the morning a memo appears on your desk, in handwriting you do not recognize, giving orders you never wrote, signed by someone whose office you were never allowed to enter. You do not own the building. You sit at the front desk, and the owner has finally started sending word. Beneath the ego is the personal unconscious. Everything you have lived and forgotten, everything you have pushed down because it was too painful or too shameful to hold. And beneath that is a deeper layer Jung called the collective unconscious, the objective psyche, the inherited impersonal floor of the human mind, populated by the great patterns he called archetypes. You did not author this layer. No one does. You inherit it the way you inherit the structure of your hands. And then there is the self, not the ego. The self, with a capital letter, is the center and the circumference of the whole psyche at once, conscious and unconscious together. It is the organizing principle of everything you are, and most of it lives in the dark. Individuation is what happens when the center of gravity begins to migrate from the ego to the self. That is the entire process in one sentence. It is not self-improvement. You are not becoming a better version of the person you were. You are becoming a different arrangement entirely, organized around a center the ego cannot control and was never meant to. Here is where we are going, so you have a reason to stay for the hardest part. I am going to show you the 7 marks this migration leaves, and they climb. They begin with a loneliness you can almost explain away, and they descend, sign by sign, toward a collapse that feels like dying. But there is something past the 7th sign. One final trap Jung identified. The single mistake almost everyone on this path makes. The one that turns the whole process into a counterfeit of itself. If you remember one thing from this video, make it that last one. Watch for it. Once you understand that the center is moving, the 7 signs stop looking like symptoms. They start looking like a map. The first mark is a loneliness that gets worse, not better, the more people are in the room. You know this one already. It is the dinner party where you are surrounded and unreachable. The family gathering where you smile in the right places and feel like you are watching yourself through glass. And the cruel part is that you cannot blame anyone for it. These are not bad people. Many of them love you. You simply cannot hand them the things that have become most important to you. Because the moment you try, the words come out flattened, and you watch the meaning die in the air between you. You have probably stopped trying to explain it because every version of the sentence makes you sound ungrateful or unwell. So you carry it in silence, and you assume the silence means something is wrong with you. You are not the only one. There is a precise name for where you are standing, and a precise reason almost no one around you can see it. Jung named this with a precision that is almost unbearable. Loneliness, he wrote, does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. Read that again. The loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the presence of an interior that has grown too specific to translate. This is what the migration of the center does first, as the gravity of your psyche pulls away from the collective, away from the shared scripts and the agreed-upon surfaces. You lose access to the common language those surfaces are made of. The things rising in you now are genuinely difficult to say. Not because you are special, because the deep psyche is, in Jung's word, incommunicable. It does not fit in the containers other people are holding out to you. And here is where the first wrong turn waits. The loneliness is real. Do not let anyone talk you out of it. But the instant you decide that the loneliness is proof that you are above the people who cannot reach you, you have taken the first step in the wrong direction. The distance is not a throne, it is just distance. She is 32, sitting at a dinner she used to love. She is scanning herself, item by item, the way you scan a coat for a lost key, certain that some essential ability has gone missing in her, and that everyone else can tell. She has not yet understood that nothing is missing. Something is arriving. But this isolation is only the clearing of the ground, and what grows up out of cleared ground is rarely gentle. The second mark almost never looks like it belongs to you. It arrives as sudden rage at something small, a tone of voice, a dish left in the sink, a stranger's confidence. The reaction is enormous and the trigger is nothing, and afterward you stand there genuinely confused by the size of what just moved through you. Or it arrives in dreams that disturb you for reasons you cannot name, or as a strange magnetic fixation on a particular kind of person. Usually someone who carries, openly and without apology, the exact quality you spent your whole life refusing to be. Jung called this material the shadow, the parts of yourself you disowned in order to become acceptable, and he was clear that they do not dissolve when you bury them. Closer examination of the dark characteristics, he wrote in Aeon, that is, the inferiorities constituting the shadow, reveals that they have an emotional nature, a kind of autonomy, and accordingly, an obsessive or better possessive quality. Autonomy, possession. He is telling you these contents have a will of their own. What you refuse to live does not lie down quietly. It waits, it gathers force, and it returns. It returns first as projection. This is why the person who infuriates you most is so often a mirror. The selfishness you cannot tolerate in them is the selfishness you never let yourself feel. The freedom that offends you is the freedom you denied yourself. The shadow puts your unlived life on other people's faces and then makes you stare at it. And Jung said something that most people skip past too quickly. The gold is in the shadow. The vitality you cut off in order to be good is still alive down there, and individuation requires you to go back down and reclaim it. But understand the cost honestly. Integration is not a victory lap, and it is not one brave afternoon of owning your faults and walking away lighter. What it actually asks of you is grief. You are meeting in full the parts of yourself you sacrifice to survive, and you are mourning every year you spent without them. And this brings you to the moment the ground beneath your name actually gives way. The third mark is the one that frightens people the most, because it goes straight for the thing they thought was solid, their own identity. The roles you played without thinking begin to feel like costumes. The competent professional, the reliable partner, the easy friend, the good daughter, the one everyone counts on. These were not lies. You were good at them. They came so naturally that you mistook them for yourself. And now you put one on and it does not fit. And you catch yourself in the middle of a sentence you have said 1,000 times, wondering for the first time whether you ever chose any of this, or whether you simply executed a program you were handed before you were old enough to refuse it. Jung called this structure the persona, and he gave the precise warning. Through the persona, a man tries to appear as this or that, he wrote, but the danger is that they become identical with their personas. That is what has happened to you. You did not just wear the mask, you became identical with it. You forgot there was a face underneath, and what you are feeling now, this strange foreignness in your own life, is the moment the mask and the face come apart. You believe the roles are load-bearing, that if you stop performing the competent one, the reliable one, the one who never needs anything, the whole structure of your life will come down on top of you. That belief is the mask protecting itself. Picture one specific man. Call him the one who fixes everything. For 40 years, he was who people called when something broke, a marriage, a furnace, a crisis at work, and he was proud of it. It was the whole of how he knew himself. Then one ordinary Tuesday, the phone rang with someone else's emergency, and for the first time he felt nothing. No pull to help, no identity rushing in to answer, only a flat question rising from underneath. Who am I if I put the phone down? He had mistaken a role for a self, and the role had just stopped fitting. The ego experiences this as a kind of terror, because the ego had built its entire sense of I on top of the persona. When the mask cracks, the ego feels like it is dying. It is not. It is being demoted. It is losing its monopoly on the word I, and it does not go quietly. Name the cost plainly. This dissolution is genuinely disorienting. You will not always know who you are while it is happening. And that is not a metaphor. And the people who love the roles, the ones who relied on the competent one, the easy one, the one who never needed anything, will not experience your questioning as growth. They will experience it as betrayal. Some of them will be right that they are losing something. The version of you they loved is in fact leaving. But the cracking of the mask does something unexpected. It changes how the world itself looks to you. The fourth mark is the strangest, and it is the one the whole process will use to seduce you. It begins quietly. A book falls open to the exact page you needed. A song arrives at the precise moment its words become unbearable. You think of someone you have not thought of in years, and the phone lights up with their name. You overhear two strangers finishing a thought you did not know you were carrying. The world stops feeling like scattered noise and starts feeling legible, as though some hidden grammar underneath events had suddenly become readable to you. Jung had a name for this that costs you nothing in rigor. He called it synchronicity, and a causal connecting principle, a meaningful coincidence between an inner state and an outer event, with no causal thread running between them, usually appearing when an archetype has been activated in the depths. He was not being mystical. He was being exact. The meaning is real. The experience is real. Something in the psyche has lit up, and the outer world appears to answer it. But here is the most important warning in this entire video, and you need to hold it. This is the exact moment the ego is most tempted to climb onto the throne. Because if the world is suddenly speaking, the ego's next thought is, it is speaking to me. It is sending me messages. I am the one it has been waiting for. And this is where a real psychological event gets metabolized into a fantasy of self-importance. This is the door the internet is standing in, waiting for you. The angel numbers. The 1111 on the clock that supposedly means you are special. The universe is responding to your vibration. It is flattery dressed as spirituality, and it works precisely because the underlying experience is genuine. Jung would tell you to keep the experience and refuse the inflation. The world has gone meaningful. It has not made you the center of the cosmos. A renewed capacity for meaning is a gift. Reading yourself into the middle of every sign is the beginning of a sickness. She is further in now. Her identity is coming apart, and she is exhausted, and she is half seduced by a feed that tells her every coincidence is the universe confirming she was chosen. Part of her wants it to be true so badly it aches. And another part, the intelligent part, the part that brought her here, quietly suspects that the flattery is a trap. If you have felt this, the book falling open to the right page, the answer arriving before you finished asking the question, tell me about it in the comments. Not to prove the universe chose you. Just describe the moment plainly, the way it actually happened. Then read the replies and watch how many people you have never met describe the exact thing you assumed was yours alone. That is its own quiet kind of evidence, and it is the only kind worth trusting. Because when the world goes legible, it forces a brutal change in the one place you cannot argue with, your own body. The fifth mark lives in the body before it ever reaches your thoughts. Your throat closes on words you do not mean. You are in a room that requires the usual performance, the polite enthusiasm, the small, agreeable lies that keep a surface pleasant, and you physically cannot produce them anymore. The pleasantry will not come up. You sit in conversations that used to be effortless and feel something close to suffocation, as though the air in rooms built on pretending had stopped being breathable. There is a clinical reason your tolerance for this just dropped to 0, and it is not that you have become too good for small talk. Jung located the supreme aim of the inner work in a single act. The supreme aim of the opus psychologicum, he wrote, is conscious realization, and the first step is to make oneself conscious of contents that have hitherto been projected. As you withdraw your projections, as you stop outsourcing your unlived material onto everyone around you, your feeling function sharpens into something almost intolerable. The feeling function is the part of the psyche that evaluates worth, that delivers the verdict of real or false, alive or dead. And as it differentiates, it stops lying to you. It returns an accurate reading of every room you enter, and many of those rooms read as false. So the body rebels. The closing throat is not a malfunction, it is a verdict. It is the most honest part of you refusing to manufacture a feeling that is not there. And now the cost, because this one is expensive in a way people underestimate. The relationships that were built entirely on the old performance will quietly end. Not in confrontation, in drift. The friendships that only ever worked because you were willing to play your part will go cold once you stop, and you will feel the room rearrange itself around your absence. Here is the part the awakening crowd never tells you. Some of those relationships were not disposable to you. You loved some of those people, and the same clarity that set you free is the clarity that is taking them away, which carries you straight into the most dangerous passage of the entire journey. The sixth mark is the one no amount of positive thinking can prevent, and the one most likely to make you believe your life is ending. It is the collapse, not a bad week, the kind where the floor itself goes. You do everything right and lose the relationship anyway. You hold the structure together and it dissolves in your hands regardless. The career, the marriage, the identity, the certainty about who you are and where your life was going, All of it comes apart at once, and there is a stretch in the middle of it where you are genuinely convinced that you are dying. Not metaphorically. You feel the end of yourself approaching, and you cannot find a single reason to believe you are wrong. The alchemists, whose images Jung spent decades decoding, had a word for this stage: the nigredo, the blackening. And this denigratio, Jung wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, is the beginning of the work, an indication of the putrefaction. Read the order of that sentence carefully. The blackening is not the failure of the work, it is the beginning of it. The older tradition called the same passage the night sea journey, the descent into the belly of the dark, where the hero is swallowed whole and the old self is dissolved before anything new can be born. And the death you are feeling is, in a sense, real. It is the death of the false self, the persona you became identical with, the ego that ruled as if it were the whole, the entire arrangement organized around the wrong center. That has to come apart, and the conscious mind has no way to experience its own dismantling except as annihilation. Picture him for a moment, a man who spent 20 years building something, a business, a name, a certainty about his own competence, and watched it come apart in a single season. The bankruptcy, then the divorce behind it, then the silence of a phone that used to never stop. Everyone called it a tragedy and waited for him to fight his way back. He could not explain to any of them that some quiet, terrible part of him was not fighting at all, that underneath the wreckage, for the first time in years, he could finally hear himself think. I am not going to lie to you about how this ends, because the lie is what makes the awakening industry rotten. The nigredo comes with no guarantee of dawn. There is no promise that you will emerge wiser, or that the loss will be redeemed, or that everything happened for a reason. That promise is exactly the spiritual anesthetic that keeps people from actually making the passage. The refusal to promise you a sunrise is the only thing that makes the darkness real enough to move through. What survives the blackening is not the self that entered it, and what is left underneath, once the false self has finished dying, is terrifying for a very specific reason. It is unfamiliar. You do not yet recognize the thing you are becoming. But the terror you feel toward what comes next is not cowardice, it is accuracy. The seventh mark is a pull. It comes from underneath, towards something too large or too strange to say out loud, a direction your logical mind would never have chosen, and may actively be ashamed of wanting. You feel it the way you feel a current in deep water, something with its own intention, drawing you toward a destination you cannot fully see. Jung understood vocation not as a career upgrade, but as an inner voice, a law that calls a person out of the collective and will not be reasoned with, the self asserting itself as the new center and issuing its first real instruction. And it is intensely, lonelily specific to you. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. Jung wrote, "There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. No one can hand you this calling, and no one can validate it for you, which is exactly why it isolates. It fits your foot and no one else's, and you cannot prove it to a single person. Now hear the cost, because it is the whole point. A true calling does not arrive to improve your life. It arrives to cost you the life you already built. It will ask for the safety, the approval, the comfortable arrangement you spent years assembling. And the terror you feel toward it is not weakness. The fear is accurate. You are afraid because some honest part of you has already done the math and knows exactly what you would have to burn down to follow it. And this carries you to the trap that almost everyone in this space falls into, including the people teaching it. Here is the turn, and if you do not understand this final mechanism, every other sign in this video will quietly counterfeit itself in you. The same process that is waking you up can imitate itself perfectly. The ego, which has been demoted and dismantled and humiliated all the way through, does not simply surrender. It adapts, and its most cunning move comes at the end. when it stops fighting the process and decides to identify with it instead. The ego seizes the experience of individuation. It identifies with the self. It takes the language of becoming whole, the descent, the shadow, the awakening, and it builds a new mask out of it, the most defended mask of all, the awakened one. Jung named this exactly. He called it inflation, the mana personality. Expansion of the personality beyond its proper limits by identification with the persona, he wrote, or with an archetype produces an exaggerated sense of one's self-importance. That is the whole disease in one sentence. The ego puffs itself up by fusing with something larger than itself, and the result is a person who feels chosen, who feels ahead of everyone, who has converted real depth into a costume of superiority. You have watched this happen in miniature your whole life. The person who reads one book and cannot stop quoting it. The new convert who suddenly pities everyone who is not converted. The friend who comes back from one retreat speaking a language built to remind you how far ahead of you they now are. Inflation is that same small mechanism scaled up until it swallows an entire self. The ego found something larger than itself, and instead of serving it, put it on like a crown. This is the quiet disgust you feel watching the influencers announce their own enlightenment. You can sense the inflation in them, and if you are honest, the reason you can sense it so precisely is that the exact same hunger lives in you. The desire to be special, to be one of the few. To have all this suffering mean that you are above the people who never had to feel it. That hunger is not your enemy because it is rare. It is your enemy because it is universal, and it is wearing the friendliest possible disguise. So here is the practice, the single test that separates real individuation from inflation, and you can run it on yourself for the rest of your life. Name the cost. Real individuation always costs you something. It humbles you, it isolates you, it takes the floor out, it asks you to grieve. Inflation only ever flatters you. It makes you feel superior and asks for nothing. So when you notice the thought arriving, the thought that you are awakened, that you have arrived, that you finally see what the sleeping masses cannot, treat that thought as the symptom it is. If your awakening makes you feel above other people, it is already curdled into something else, a new and more spiritual mask, worn at the precise moment you were most certain you had taken every mask off. The most dangerous version of you is the one who believes they have finally arrived. Surviving this requires a humility most of the spiritual world has no use for, the willingness to keep descending, to never plant a flag, to hold what Jung called the tension, the agonizing space between who you are now and what the unconscious is still asking of you, without resolving it into a comfortable identity. Because individuation is not a destination, you do not reach a permanent state of peace and stay there. Jung was clear that the transcendent function, the thing that reconciles the opposites in you, does not deliver you to an arrival. It leads, in his words, toward the revelation of the essential man. A revelation, not a finish line. Healing is not a place you get to. It is a quiet negotiation you wake up and practice again every single day. She is standing in an ordinary moment now, the same kind that opened this video. A room, voices, the old distance, but something has changed in how she holds it. She no longer needs the distance to mean she is chosen. She no longer needs it to mean anything flattering at all. The change is simply true, and she can hold it without inflating it into specialness and without grieving it as loss. She is not above the room. She's just no longer pretending to be in it the way she used to. That is what the title was always pointing at. Most people will never understand is not a badge, and it is not membership in a club of the awakened. It names a doorway, and you are standing in it, with no certificate, no audience, and no one to confirm that you belong there. The only thing on the other side is the work, continuing quietly, for as long as you are alive to do it. You came here to feel understood more precisely, not comforted, understood. And if any single line in this has named something you have been carrying without language, then you already know the difference between being told you are special and being told the truth. One of them asks nothing of you. The other one is the beginning of the work. Before you go, tell me in the comments which of the 7 marks you recognize first. Name the one that made you feel seen, or the one you are still not ready to admit is happening. Be specific. Somewhere below this video, someone is scrolling through the replies right now, certain that what they are living has no name and no witness. The sentence you leave becomes the proof that it has both. That is the whole reason this channel exists. Stay close, there is more of this map to come.
Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.